Hello, and welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Church of Plano online. My name is Jeanette Bailey, and I am one of the worship associates here at the church. At Community UU, we work for justice, nourish spirits, and transform lives. Whether you are a church member, a new or a longtime visitor, or you just found this video online, may you find connection with us and food for your mind and spirit. Today's service features the message, Replacing Me with We, with our guest minister, the Reverend Dr. Neal Jones. We will be engaged on a topic that has been present in thinking Americans' minds for some time. The insurrection at our Capitol on January 6th of this year was a graphic reminder of the fragility of democracy, even our American democracy. But the threat runs deeper than politics and ideology. It is spiritual. It is the inability to put the common good before self-interest.
Opening words this morning come from historian Howard Zinn. To be hopeful in bad times is based on the fact that in human history is not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we only see the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. But if we remember those times and places, and there are many, when people behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction.
We light this flame as a reminder of our mission of being a light of the world, in unity with those who came before us, with whom we are a spiritual family. We shall be able to commit to the building of a community of free faith beyond geographical limits and personal beliefs. May we be a shelter to all who need it most. Unitarian Universalism is a covenantal denomination. We hold that we do not have to believe alike in order to love alike. In this and every UU community, there is a diversity of personal creeds, but there is one covenant for this church. And this covenant is about the ways we promise to be in relationship with each other and the wider community. We recommit ourselves to these promises each time we recite this church's covenant. And each time we gather, we recite it again. Please join with me now. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another.
Spirit, harvest of love, our step with fire. sun, our trials in this flight, appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind, speak for the soul we are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in awe, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again.
We are all longing to go home to some place we have never been, a place half remembered and half envisioned. We can only catch glimpses of it from time to time. Community. Somewhere there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere a circle of hands will open to receive us, and eyes will light up as we enter. Voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. Community means strength that joins our strength to do the work that needs to be done, arms to hold us when we falter, a circle of healing, a circle of friends, someplace where we can be free. A benefit of the spiritual community is sharing our happiness and our burdens. We invite you to do that with us now. Please use the chat feature in your Zoom window to share with us what is on your heart today. And may we call blessings for all who share, all who feel they're not able to share, and all who listen. guest minister today is the Reverend Dr. Neal Jones. He is a psychologist at the Pisgah Institute in Asheville. He was born and raised in North Carolina. He earned his BA from Wake Forest University, his Master's of Divinity from Southeastern Seminary, and his Doctor of Psychology from Baylor University here in Texas. He has served as the minister of 5 congregations in North and South Carolina, Texas, and Pennsylvania, most recently at Mainline Unitarian Church near Philadelphia. He also serves as the chair of the National Board of Trustees for Americans United for the Separation of Church and State. Dr. Jones teaches and practices a spirituality of personal wholeness, relational respect, and social justice. Please get comfortable and enjoy the music and the message for today.
If the insurrection of our nation's capital on January the 6th accomplished anything, it vividly reminded us of the fragility of democracy. Now, we had been warned at the beginning by one of our founders, who also happens to be a Unitarian. In addition to being a leader of the revolution, our first vice president, and our second president, John Adams was also a student of history. Though he helped to establish our American democracy, his reading of history had taught him the precariousness of democracy. Remember, he warned his compatriots, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy yet that did not commit suicide. It is vain to say that democracy is less vain, less proud, less selfish, less ambitious, or less avaricious than aristocracy or monarchy. It is not true, in fact, and nowhere appears in history. Those passions are the same in all men under all forms of government, and when unchecked, produce the same effects of fraud, violence, and cruelty. Sobering words from one of our founders. In fact, based on his study of history, Adams estimated that, on average, a democracy only lasts about 250 years, which means that our American version of democratic government doesn't have much longer to survive. And as we survey our civic landscape, it appears that Adams' prophecy may be coming true. Americans are increasingly losing their faith in democratic government. And for good reason. It seems either unwilling or unable to address our most pressing problems. Unprecedented income inequality, stagnant wages, the evisceration of the middle class, crumbling infrastructure, climate change, a pandemic, an epidemic of gun violence, decreasing life expectancy. Need I go on? Now, because I'm something of a political junkie, it's tempting to veer off into a discussion of how big money is poisoning our political system, or how gerrymandering is rigging our political system. But instead, this morning, I want to look at the bigger picture. To put this in spiritual terms, I would put it this way. We are replacing a we culture with a me culture. We no longer believe in the great idea of society itself. Or as Margaret Thatcher put it some years ago, There is no such thing as society, only a collection of individuals. We are increasingly opposed to the idea of living together in a society in which we invest in the common good. Now, the core of democracy is treating each person as having equal worth. It's choosing what is best for everyone, not just yourself. It's about recognizing a common humanity, a common purpose, and a common destiny. However, the public sphere is being consumed by private interest. Democracy is like a garden. It must be continually tended and nurtured. Otherwise, it will die. When I was growing up in the 60s and 70s in a small town in North Carolina, all of us, kids from the richest families and the poorest families, Black kids and white kids, we attended the same public schools, read books in the same public library, played in the same public park, traveled the same public streets and highways, were provided the same public police protection and fire protection, and were educated at the same public universities. Despite our varied family incomes and backgrounds, we shared common institutions, common values, and a common culture. And yet, increasingly, our world is divided between those who believe in society and those who believe and live a kind of tribalism characterized by a hostility, a violence, a rage that is tearing apart our social fabric. Your kid attends a school without books, with lead in the water and asbestos in the air? That's okay. My kids are getting a quality education. You don't have health insurance? That's okay. I do. Your minimum wage job doesn't allow you to support yourself so that you have to work 2 and 3 jobs? That's okay. I'm making a killing. That's not democracy. That's sociopathic. Now, all of us here are all too aware of the political polarization between so-called liberals and so-called conservatives, because many of us are caught up in it. We are aware of how social media makes matters worse by creating echo chambers, feeding us beliefs we already believe, interacting only with like-minded people, and keeping out ideas with which we don't agree, and people with whom we have little in common. But the great divide in the body politic goes way beyond the cyber world. Not only do liberals and conservatives differ politically, but increasingly we live separately as never before. Liberals and conservatives are less likely to marry or have friends or even neighbors from the other side of the political spectrum. Liberals and conservatives tend to shop at different businesses, including grocery stores and banks. For instance, liberals are more likely to shop at Target, Trader Joe's, and Whole Foods. Conservatives at Walmart and Sam's Club. In ways more unconscious than conscious, more and more of our political choices and characteristics are expressed through partisan allegiances, carrying a tote bag, wearing yoga pants, shopping at Walmart, driving a pickup, are ways of signaling our tribal membership. As a nation, we are living in separate political, social, and even physical worlds, each becoming more homogeneous within our tribes and more intensely hostile toward the other tribe. Well, that's the bad news, which seems to be fulfilling John Adams' prophecy about the fate of democracy. But I want to share with you some good news of how we might save our democracy. And it's grounded in something we use can confidently put our faith in science, in biology, to be precise. I'm relying on the research of Nicholas Christakis, who teaches social and natural science at Yale. He's published a book entitled Blueprint: The Evolutionary Origins of a Great Society, in which he makes the case that natural selection has genetically hardwired us for kindness, love, and cooperation, because these are the traits which have promoted our survival as a species. In other words, we carry within our genetic code the blueprint, hence the title of the book, for making a good society. Now, his observations counter the typical interpretation of Darwin's survival of the fittest, which emphasizes competition over cooperation. It also counters the current polarization between conservatives and liberals, which begs the question of whether a common American identity is feasible or even desirable anymore. Can you love people in your tribe without hating everyone else? That's the question we have to wrestle with if we're going to save our democracy. According to Christakis' research, we arrive in this world with a genetic blueprint, which affords us the capacity for love and friendship, allowing us to work together to achieve common goals while minimizing hostility and violence. Now, Christakis has a fascination with shipwrecks because he believes they tell us a lot about how societies come into being and how they fall from grace. During the period of European exploration up to the modern era of navigation, there have been over 6,000 shipwrecks. And in the great majority of these, everyone on board went down to a watery grave. But the ones which interest Christakis are those that survived, that made landfall, that set up camp, and usually as a result of good leadership. An intriguing case study is provided by two shipwrecks which occurred at the same time on opposite sides of the same island in the Pacific in 1864. This case is practically a social experiment of how social orders work. Now, one crew was led by a captain who seemed mostly interested in his own survival. Landing on a rocky beach, the crew had no shoes, a few clothes, a pencil, and some matches. Leaving one weaker man to die, they set out across land. And along the way, they abandoned other men who were injured or too weak to go on. One man was eaten. 3 were eventually rescued, including the captain. All the lower ranked seamen died. Now, men from the other ship on the other side of the island stuck together and worked collaboratively from the beginning. Despite some disagreements, there was tremendous loyalty to the group. The captain had been sick when the ship foundered, but the men refused to abandon him and took him along with them on shore. Under his guidance, they built a cabin. With nails they forged themselves. Using a Roman recipe, the captain made concrete from seashells and sand. He also crafted chess pieces, dominoes, and a pack of cards. which they had to discard because one of the crew was a sore loser and started fights. And as they were from different nations, they taught each other foreign languages and math. According to the captain's log, their impromptu school equalized them. He writes, "We were alternatively the student and the teacher. We achieved a perfect equality among us." The captain proposed that the men vote and choose a head of the family. His duty, specified the captain, was to maintain order and harmony with gentleness and firmness. The men elected the sore loser at cards. He remained in this position for the 2 years of their ordeal. He, the captain, and a third man set sail in a repair dinghy and made it all the way to New Zealand. And then they turned right around and went back to the island to rescue the 2 men who trusted them to return. No group can survive without trust. You can't have a congregation without trust. You can't have a country without trust in one another. Knowing that we will make mistakes and we will have mutinies along the way. But you cannot make it unless you can trust people you barely know. This crew, relying on mutual trust, respect, and cooperation, brought into being a good society. Now, Christakis concedes that evolution has endowed us also with a propensity for animosity and violence, which contribute to the collapse of the social order. But living socially, democratically, is the blueprint for organizing a successful society. And we have that genetic blueprint for kindness, altruism, and friendship within us. That's the good news. The spiritual challenge of our democracy is to cultivate and nurture that capacity, remembering that the human species has advanced more through cooperation than competition. My grandparents were dirt farmers in rural North Carolina, and they survived the Great Depression, not by living a philosophy of live and let live, but of live and help live. They helped their neighbors bring in their crops, and their neighbors helped them do the same. They delivered one another's babies. When a neighbor got sick, they took turns sitting by the bedside. When there was a death, they brought food to the rest of the family. They washed the body of the deceased. They dug the grave. And they sat up all night with the corpse, a silent vigil to counter the loneliness of death. I once asked my grandfather why he would sit up with a dead person throughout the night, knowing he had to go to work the next day. He replied, "Because it's the thing we did. It's the thing we did." If we live simply for me and mine, we end up living the law of the jungle, a war of all against all, and a free market of wolves leads to a slaughter of lambs. But if we take the spiritual journey from me to we can create a civilization. And what is civilization? It's a web of connections, joining people to families, friends, communities, and country. rooted in the recognition of the whole and a companionship with others. Civilization is not natural. It doesn't happen automatically. If it happens, we make it happen. It's the thing we do. A stable and honored system of laws in which no person is above the law. Safe streets, secure pensions for the elderly, quality schools for children, all part of the bargain we strike with each other for civilization. Why do young men die in battle for their country? Why do old people plant trees they will never sit under? Why do we pay taxes for schools we will never attend? Because we are all part of a big, beautiful aspiration expressed in the preamble to the Constitution as we the people. All of us, wherever we're going together. This is it. There is no planet B. There is no alternative. We are all in this together. You, me, us, we, the people. Amen.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We can feed our every need. Every need. We can feed our every need. Every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these our world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. A new way, a new way, a new way.
Our wish at Community UU Church is to cultivate a spirit of gratitude and generosity in all things. This beloved community is a living thing, and we bring much to it by our presence, our love, our caring, our generosity, and our hard work. And we may be fed by it in equal or even larger measure. We encourage you to give as you are able, so that the good works of our church may continue. We also remind you that this month, the Share the Plate beneficiary is God's Pantry. God's Pantry is located in East Plano and exists to extend a helping hand to the needy by providing food to everyone, regardless of residence, income, or any other requirement. So how can you make your donation to the church or share the plate with God's Pantry? You can donate by sending a check to the church building address, which you can find on the front page of our website. You can also donate by visiting our website and clicking on the blue Donate Now button on the front page. On behalf of our community, your generosity is deeply appreciated. As our worship time draws to a close, it is time for us now to extinguish the chalice. Please recite these words with me now. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our closing words come from the poet and author Ian Thomas. Do not let the world make you hard. Do not let pain make you hate. Do not let the bitterness steal your sweetness. Take pride that even though the rest of the world may disagree, you still believe it to be a beautiful place. Amen.